From a moment we decided to let dogs choose their own families, we believed we were giving them freedom. Freedom to follow instinct, to trust their hearts, to walk toward the people who felt right. Most dogs did exactly that, trotting eagerly into waiting arms, tails wagging with certainty. But one dog did something no one expected. Instead of choosing a family, he stopped. He turned back, and he returned to the exact same spot again and again, as if that place was calling him louder than any human ever could. At first, it felt like coincidence, maybe confusion, maybe fear. People tried, gently guiding him toward different families, each one hopeful, each one ready to love him. He would take a few steps, look up with those eyes that seemed far older than his body, and then quietly walk back to the same patch of ground, the same corner, the same silence. And with every return, the air grew heavier, as if the dog was guarding a secret no one else could see. Days passed, and curiosity turned into concern. Volunteers watched him sit there for hours, unmoving, patient, loyal to something invisible. He was not scared. He was not lost. There was purpose in his stillness. Dogs feel things humans overlook. They remember what we forget, and sometimes they stay where love once lived. That spot was not empty, damn. It was full of memory, full of waiting, full of a promise that had not yet been fulfilled. Whispers began among those who noticed. Some said the dog was grieving. Others believed he was protecting something. Children asked why he would not leave, and no one had an answer that felt complete. Every time someone knelt beside him, he would lean in gently, accept the touch, and then return to his place, as if saying, "Not yet," as if he knew that leaving too soon would mean abandoning something that still mattered. And then, on a quiet afternoon, everything changed. The reason for his loyalty, his patience, his silent refusal to move finally revealed itself. What happened next was not something you could plan, train, or teach. It was something only a dog, guided by love and memory, could lead us to. And once you understand why he stayed, you will never look at loyalty, choice, or love the same way again. The truth behind the dog's strange behavior began to surface slowly, almost reluctantly, as if the world itself needed time to catch up to what he already knew. Volunteers started paying closer attention to that quiet spot he kept returning to, noticing how his body softened the moment he reached it. His breathing slowed, his ears relaxed, and his eyes fixed on the distance as though he were watching someone approach. It was not anxiety that held him there. It was recognition. One afternoon, an older volunteer knelt beside him and brushed away leaves that had gathered near the fence line. Beneath them was a worn indentation in the earth, shaped by time and waiting. This was not a random place. It was a place where someone once sat for hours, perhaps days, sharing silence, warmth, and companionship. Dogs do not forget hands that loved them or voices that spoke their name when the world felt uncertain. As the days went on, small details began to connect. The dog would perk up whenever footsteps echoed nearby, only to relax again when they passed. He was not hoping for anyone. He was expecting someone specific. In emotional dog stories, this is where loyalty reveals its deepest form, not loud or dramatic, but steady and unbreakable. He stayed because leaving would mean letting go of a bond that still felt alive to him. People often believe dogs live only in the present, but dogs carry the past differently. They remember through scent, through sound, through places where love once anchored them. That spot held the strongest memory of all. It was where he had last felt safe, last felt chosen, last felt like he belonged without question. To move away from it would have felt like betrayal. And so, while families came and went, full of excitement and good intentions, the dog waited with quiet dignity. His choice was not about rejecting love. It was about honoring it. Something unresolved remained, and until it was faced, his heart would not let his paws take him anywhere else. The turning point came when someone asked a question no one had thought to ask before. Instead of wondering why the dog would not choose a family, they wondered who had once chosen him. Records were checked, old photos reviewed, and stories shared among longtime volunteers. Slowly, a forgotten chapter began to resurface, one that explained why the dog's loyalty felt so focused, so unwavering. Years earlier, A man had visited the shelter almost every day. He never adopted, never filled out paperwork, but he sat in that exact spot, talking softly to one particular dog. He was gentle, consistent, and patient. For reasons no one knew, he stopped coming. But to the dog, his absence did not mean the end. It meant waiting. Dogs and emotional stories often form bonds that go beyond ownership. They bond to presence, to routine, to the feeling of being seen. That man had given the dog something rare, attention without demand. No leash, no expectation, just shared time. That kind of connection leaves a mark deeper than commands or treats ever could. As this realization spread, the atmosphere around the dog shifted. People no longer tried to coax him away. They sat with him instead. They spoke softly, respecting the invisible line between memory and hope. The dog remained calm, grateful even, as if acknowledging that at last, someone understood why he stayed. Then, one morning, something subtle changed. The dog lifted his head, not with anticipation, but with certainty. His body leaned forward, not tense but ready. Those who witnessed it felt a chill, the kind that comes when a story is about to reveal its most important moment. The past, it seemed, was finally catching up to the present. And as footsteps approached from beyond the gate, the dog did something he had never done before. He stood up and took a step away from the spot he had guarded for so long. The moment the dog stepped away from that spot, everyone froze. It was a small movement, almost insignificant, yet it carried the weight of everything he had been holding on to. For the first time since anyone could remember, he chose motion over waiting. His eyes were fixed ahead, focused with a calm intensity that made it clear this was not hesitation. This was recognition. Through the gate walked an older man, slower now, shoulders slightly curved by time. His hair was thinner, his steps uncertain, but his voice, when he spoke, carried the same softness it always had. The dog stopped midway, head tilted, ears lifting as if aligning memory with reality. Dogs do not need faces to remember love. They remember energy, rhythm, the sound of belonging. As the man knelt, struggling slightly, the dog closed the distance. There was no jump, no frantic excitement. Instead, there was a gentle press of fur against trembling hands, the kind of greeting reserved for reunions that never truly ended. Those watching felt their throats tighten, realizing they were witnessing a promise kept, not a coincidence. The man whispered the dog's name, a name no one at the shelter had ever used. Hearing it spoken aloud seemed to unlock something in the dog's posture. His tail moved slowly, deliberately, as if every motion mattered. This was not joy bursting forward. It was relief settling in. Time seemed to soften around them. In emotional dog stories, this is the moment where loyalty reveals its purpose. The dog had not been refusing a future. He had been waiting to complete the past. And now that the bond had resurfaced, the weight he carried finally had somewhere to rest. As the man sat on the ground, the dog lay beside him, exactly as he used to years before. The position was familiar, practiced, instinctive. It told a story of countless quiet afternoons spent together, of words spoken softly and moments shared without witnesses. The shelter was silent, not out of instruction, but out of respect. The man explained that illness had taken him away suddenly. Hospital stays turned into months, and months became years. He believed the dog would be adopted, loved, and moved on. What he did not know was that the dog had chosen differently, not out of sadness, but out of faith. Dogs often wait not because they are stuck, but because they trust time more than humans do. As he spoke, the dog listened, head resting against the man's leg, eyes half closed. There was no anger in him, no confusion, only calm acceptance. Emotional dog stories often remind us that dogs do not measure love in duration, but in truth. And this bond, though interrupted, had never been broken. Those nearby realized something profound. The choice the dog had been given at the beginning was never about selecting a family from a line of strangers. It was about honoring the family he had already chosen once before. His refusal to move had been an act of devotion, not defiance. By the end of that day, the dog no longer returned to the spot. He stayed close to the man, following him with an ease that suggested the waiting was finally over. The place that once held his memory no longer needed guarding. What mattered had returned. In the days that followed, the shelter noticed a different dog. He still moved gently, still observed the world with quiet eyes, but the weight he once carried was gone. He no longer scanned the distance from that familiar spot. Instead, he stayed close, always aware of where the man was, as if confirming that this time, he was real. That presence changed everything. The man returned every day after that. Sometimes he spoke, sometimes he simply sat, but the dog mirrored his rhythm perfectly. When the man grew tired, the dog slowed. When the man laughed softly, the dog lifted his head. Emotional dog stories often reveal that dogs do not just love us. They attune themselves to us, becoming reflections of our inner state. Volunteers watched as the dog began interacting differently with others. He accepted affection more openly, leaned into touch, and even played briefly, something he had not done before. It was as though completing that unfinished chapter had unlocked parts of him that had been held back. Loyalty, once fulfilled, had transformed into peace. What stood out most was the absence of anxiety. The dog no longer waited with tension or watched with expectation. He lived fully in each moment now, secure in the knowledge that what mattered most had been found again. Stories like this remind us that unresolved bonds can shape behavior in ways we rarely recognize. The shelter, once a place of waiting for him, became a place of passing through. Not because he was eager to leave, but because he no longer needed it as an anchor. His sense of belonging had shifted from a location to a living presence beside him. As arrangements were quietly discussed, the dog stayed close, resting his head against the man's leg as if listening to conversations he already understood. There was no fear in him, no uncertainty. Dogs in emotional stories often sense outcomes before humans do. His calm suggested that whatever came next was already accepted. The man, aware of his limitations, moved carefully, but the dog adapted without effort. He waited when needed, guided when necessary, and offered silent reassurance with every step. This was not dependency. It was partnership, the kind built over time, strengthened by absence, and proven by patience. Those who observed the bond noticed something subtle but powerful. The dog did not cling. He trusted. Trust born from years of waiting without bitterness, without resentment. Emotional dog stories often teach that true loyalty is not about possession, but about belief in return. The spot by the fence, once the center of the dog's world, faded into the background. New routines formed naturally. New moments replaced old ones, not as substitutes, but as continuations. The past had not been erased. It had been carried forward. And through it all, the dog remained exactly who he had always been. Faithful, quiet, certain, not because the world had finally rewarded him, but because he had never stopped believing that love, once given, finds its way back. In the end, this story was never just about a dog choosing a family. It was about a dog refusing to forget what love once felt like. While humans move forward by replacing what was lost, dogs move forward by honoring it. That quiet spot by the fence was not a place of sadness, but a place of truth, where loyalty stood still long enough for the world to catch up. This journey reminds us that patience is not weakness, and waiting is not wasted time. The dog did not wait because he was afraid of a new beginning, but because he trusted that real bonds do not disappear simply because time passes. In a world that rushes to the next moment, his stillness became a lesson few of us are brave enough to live by. There is something deeply humbling in realizing that dogs often understand love more purely than we do. They do not question its return, they do not doubt its value, and they do not replace it when it becomes inconvenient. They remember, they remain, and they believe. And sometimes, that belief is enough to bring the past back home. As you reflect on this story, ask yourself how many moments in your own life have been overlooked simply because they did not arrive on your schedule. How many connections deserve patience instead of abandonment? This dog's choice challenges us to reconsider what loyalty truly means and whether we are willing to wait for what matters, even when no one else understands why. If this story touched something in you, take a moment to be part of this space. Subscribe to the channel to keep discovering stories that reveal the quiet truths of loyalty and love. Leave a like to help these messages reach others. and share in the comments what this story made you feel. Sometimes, the most meaningful conversations begin with a simple moment of connection.